to stop in just over 2 weeks' time. And those are the latest headlines from BBC World. Take a check for more at bbcnews.com.
Now on BBC World, in the first of a two-part series, Nurses on the Frontline follows nurses giving battlefield treatment to civilians caught up in a 60-year-old conflict in the mountains of eastern Burma.
Up to 80% of the world's healthcare is provided by nurses and midwives. In the developing world, they are often a patient's only hope. It is the nurses and midwives who are often at the sharp end. Less fated than their glamorous doctor counterparts, paid a pittance, yet no less committed. They are the front line in the global health crisis. In this special edition of Nurses on the Front Line, we are in the mountains of eastern Burma. We follow 3 medics as they treat victims of one of the world's longest-running conflicts. These nurses provide medical attention for the Karen, a minority people, many of whom have been resisting the Burmese government for nearly 60 years. The 3 nurses themselves are Karen. They are members of the FBR, the Free Burma Rangers. The FBR is a volunteer aid and humanitarian organisation for civilians in an area of conflict the size of Switzerland.
I am a nurse. I volunteered to join the FBR.
Poo too is 34. She volunteered to work inside the Burma border.
I am a nurse, a volunteer with the FBR.
29-year-old Winston also gives basic training to the new FBR volunteer medics.
I am a medic. I follow with FBR at 1997.
35-year-old Thieu Plu was trained by Médecins Sans Frontières and French aid NGOs. The Burmese military forbids filming by foreign TV crews in eastern Burma. But for 4 years, during 4 separate missions, the Free Burma Rangers did agree that our crew could film its relief operations. Each mission was about 25 days long. The military government has an iron grip on Burma. The junta is run by General Tan Shui, a senior officer who came to power in 1992. Alongside North Korea, it's the pariah of Asian nations, with an appalling human rights record, condemned by Amnesty and other groups. 8 main ethnic groups make up Burma. By far the most numerous are the Burma people, who live mostly in the central lowland area. A 1948 post-independent constitution guarantees equal rights for all the minorities. But soon after independence, multiple insurgencies by the minority groups started. Today, only the Karen and their ethnic cousins, the Karenni, still carry on a significant open armed resistance. The Burmese army has been stepping up its offensives in the Karen and Karenni states. In May 2007, the European Parliament deplored the Burmese regime's campaign of ethnic cleansing against several major ethnic groups fighting for autonomy. Karenni villages, sympathetic to the ragtag guerrilla army, are the junta's soft targets. The Free Burma Rangers recorded this attack by the military 6 years ago. Fearing more attacks, the local populations have 2 choices: become refugees in neighbouring Thailand, or begin a peripatetic existence as internal exiles, termed internally displaced people, or IDPs. According to the Thai-Burma Consortium, an alliance of NGOs since 1997, 1 million people have been forced into internal exile. In the front line of delivering medical aid are the nurses of the Free Burma Rangers. The FBR is a mix of medics and aid workers. Fearing reprisals from the military, specifics of its operation are difficult to acquire, but the FBR websites show a strong US connection with Protestant churches. A condition for our filming is not to reveal its base for the humanitarian missions. American medical experts would accompany this mission, but asked not to be included in the film. Every mission, including ours in 2004, is escorted by the Karen resistance movement, the Karen National Union. The KNU is outnumbered, but the resistance knows this ground and how to dodge the army. Its biggest worry is not the Burmese soldiers, many of whom are illiterate conscripts, but the thousands of landmines scattered in the mountains.
We don't know if there are any landmines, so don't get off the path.
Shortly afterwards, a scout spots a landmine. With a great deal of care, the device is deactivated. The group is then able to move on again. After 2 days on foot, the FBR mission arrives at a village well stocked in advance with supplies. Nurse Chiu Plu sorts out the aid. Later, he explains his motivation for being an FBR volunteer.
When I stay on my own and am in good health, it's no good. I've seen too many of my brothers and sisters suffer. When one of them is in need, it's my duty to help them. That's why I've joined the Rangers.
Before heading into the conflict area, the team organises the medical supplies for transport by porters. The labour is willingly given by the villagers. It's going to be a perilous trip. A Karen resistance anthem stiffens their resolve. Final farewells, and then the group moves off. They are transporting medical aid that's cost the Rangers several $1,000s to buy. The money, we are told, has come from anonymous private individuals as well as churches. It's been a 5 days grueling march from the base. The scouts find that 4 villages have been attacked by the Burmese army. The villagers are in hiding, so well concealed that not even the Rangers' experienced trackers can find them in the jungle valleys. They press on and find more abandoned villages. The handful who have stayed welcome the Rangers. They have no hesitation in telling them where their neighbours are hiding. A radio contact confirms that the IDPs found sanctuary in the undergrowth. The Rangers finally get access to the villagers who need medical treatment. Before they fled, the villagers had no time to collect food or belongings. They are tired and hungry. For 10 days, they have been too terrified to go foraging for food. After days of tracking, Chiao Plu, Pu Tu and Winston begin the work they volunteered for. They waste no time and set up a makeshift treatment centre. News of the Rangers' arrival spreads quickly, and people come out of hiding to seek treatment. This woman has malaria, widespread and probably a bigger killer than landmines in eastern Burma. No one keeps statistics, but reports of people succumbing to the disease are common. The patient is given a quinine drip. Her treatment will last several days. The rest of the team carries out consultations and administers medication. Most vulnerable are the children and elderly, who are suffering from vitamin deficiencies, diarrhea, and a variety of other ailments such as typhoid and dengue fever. The nurses also deal with munitions wounds. This Karen villager was injured when a faulty pistol backfired. The wound is superficial, but the gash is close to his eye. Chiao Plu and Winston expertly avoid damaging his eye. They've learnt by experience. Their training is force of circumstance. Try something or the patient dies. The 1,000 refugees are sheltering here in the forest, a fragment of the estimated 2 million Karen living in the mountains. They are highland subsistence rice farmers. Unless they can begin the cycle of clearance and planting, there will be no harvest.
In 2 weeks it'll be time to start clearing the forest in order to get our paddy fields ready. But if the Burmese army doesn't leave the valley, we won't be able to do this. If we wait too long, it'll be too late to harvest any rice next year.
The villagers also claim the military is using them for forced labour.
The Burmese told us that they wanted to work the forest and in a mine nearby. They ordered us to work for them. They said, if you don't come, the next time we see you, we'll kill you.
As the rangers continue their treatment, a group of new refugees arrives at the camp. The night before, the Burmese army attacked another valley in the Karen homeland. Yet more villagers have been forced to leave their homes. Alarmed by this new wave of refugees, the rangers decide to send on ahead a team to check what's going on. In part 2, we catch up with the scouting mission.
Fast Track focuses on a continent which is only just waking up to the idea of mass tourism, but probably has the most to gain from it: Africa.
On Have Your Say this week, what can be done to tackle climate change? The Live Earth music events aim to trigger a global movement to solve the climate crisis. If we all went green, would it make a difference? Email us now.
This week on Peshart's People, we meet the man whom many believe to have been the greatest tennis player the world has ever seen. That's Rod Laver with me here on BBC World.
From a city with nothing in the shops to a city that doesn't stop. I'm James Rogers and I'll be taking a nighttime tour of modern Moscow here on BBC World.
In the front line of delivering medical aid are the nurses of the Free Burma Rangers. The FBR is a mix of medics and aid workers. We follow 3 medics as they treat victims of one of the world's longest-running conflicts.
It's been hyped for as long as I can remember, but the iPhone has now finally been released. This week on Click, we'll take a good in-depth look at the device and find out if it really has been worth the wait.
We are in the mountains of eastern Burma, with volunteer nurses delivering medical aid to the Karen people, an ethnic minority in open conflict with the Burmese military government. The reconnaissance team has been gone for 24 hours. Contact is made.
You have to go down very quickly.
Where is he now?
Stay on the way.
The radio message says someone has been injured. A few minutes later, we meet the reconnaissance team at the top of the hill. 2 hours ago, a 16-year-old villager stepped on a landmine. Having heard that the Rangers had entered his village just pillaged by the army, he thought it would be safe to return with his friends. It was his misfortune to step on a newly laid mine. His lower leg was ripped to shreds. With little anaesthetic, Winston and Tiao Plu had to do a below-the-knee amputation. The boy is in a state of shock. He's lost a lot of blood and his pulse is weak. Winston takes his blood pressure. The next few hours will be crucial. The teenager's blood pressure stabilizes. The medics, with their crude battlefield surgery, have saved his life. Tiao Plu remains modest and says little about what has happened.
And you think you saved his life?
I don't like para. I need to do for emergency care like this.
But the victim is not out of danger. The porters take it in turns to bear the burden as they rush him back to camp. Once back, Poo 2 takes over, assisted by Winston, who did the amputation. The Rangers prepare to evacuate the wounded youngster from the war zone. His bandages are changed. It's a 4 days agonizing trek to the nearest field hospital, and there is a serious risk of infection. Exhausted, Winston is relieved to see the end of an emotionally charged day.
You saved his life today?
Yeah, we saved his life.
The following day, the victim is evacuated. In the camp, the atmosphere seems less charged. Normally, Ka Pase is a pastor, but he's got another job as the Rangers' cameraman.
I think the camera is a powerful tool. The war's been going on here for a long time. Before, we fought with guns. That works, but only inside Burma. Now, with these tools, we can try to bring things to the attention of the whole world and show what's going on here. I hope that the world will understand us better and help us in one way or another.
Nowadays, every Rangers group is equipped with a camera. They post footage like this on the internet. Browsers are told this young girl was shot in the arm by the army. This is the village of Sawa Dare. In November 2006, another Rangers cameraman was on hand to film the aftermath of a raid by the army. These Karen villagers were working in their fields when soldiers emerged from the forest and opened fire. 2 villagers were killed outright. Returning to the spot a few days later, relatives had no choice but to bury the victims there and then. These photos were also taken by the Rangers. The Rangers say it was the Burmese infantry who did the killing. The Rangers say the number of Karen fugitives being driven from their villages to find sanctuary here in the mountains is increasing by the day. More fugitives means a bigger workload for the volunteer nurses. Poo 2 has her work cut out, giving just basic treatment and simple advice. Like many of the Karen from the mountains, Poo 2's life has been marked by tragedy. She has lost many of her friends to the war. Her own husband was shot stabbed, and left to die from his wounds. Putu believes that the civil war has its roots deep in racial divisions between the Burmese majority and the minorities.
We share the same way of thinking as ordinary people, ordinary Burmese people. We could be friends and live and work together. It doesn't bother me. However, certain Burmese have contempt for us. They think they're superior to us, Karens. It would be difficult to live together with those people.
There are no signs the government is contemplating making peace with the Karen.
An emissary came to the village. He told us that the army had enough soldiers and food. He threatened us, saying that if we don't go down to the plains, troops would come up here and open fire and kill many of us. Then he took a rope and showed us how the soldiers would tie us up and drag us to do forced labour in the plains. Finally, he grabbed a little girl and threatened to cut her throat.
Over the 4 years of filming, our crew has noticed an increase in army forays into Karen territory. The Karen and Karenni fighters make a show of solidarity and defiance, but there is no disguising a creeping sense of despair. They are increasingly isolated and puzzled that their struggle is all but ignored by the outside world. A resistance leader cannot disguise his bitterness. If no one comes to our aid, he says, we'll be forced to stop fighting and will leave our people defenseless. Meanwhile, for Putu, the mission continues. It's a freezing night in the forest camp. In the dark, a woman begins contractions. Putu is the midwife. She has a great deal of experience and works calmly without any instruments. The next morning, mother and child are doing well. These people have nothing left. For these internal refugees, the arrival of a healthy baby represents a hope for a better life.
I really hope that one day this child will have the chance to live in peace.
A few weeks into a mission, the medicines begin to run out. When this happens, our crew joins the team returning to base for more supplies. On the return journeys, the missions, as with this one in 2006, are joined by refugees who are seeking protection as they make for the Thai border. Moving away from the front line, the group comes by a KNU clinic. It's here that the young Karen who stepped in a mine is being treated. He has survived the 4-day trek, but his wound became infected. The leg above his knee had to be removed. His father is at his side. The boy frets about his future. He believes he is now a burden his family can ill afford.
When it happened, I asked the others to shoot me. I grew up like everyone else, with a future, but now no one can do anything for me. It's too late.
The Rangers tell us the army's objective is to wound and maim indiscriminately, to break the will of the Karen villagers supporting the resistance. Since this film was made, there's been no let-up in the Burmese government's policy of forcing the Karen out of their homes. Dozens more villages have come under attack. Thousands more internally displaced people are hiding in the forest. Tiao Plu, Winston and Putu are still working on the front line. The Free Burma Rangers have launched dozens more aid missions. In the next programme, the crew is on its 4th visit. It's early 2007, and we are in the company of one of the Rangers' latest recruits. There's a firefight with the military, but we will find our new volunteer is not to be put off.
welcome to the Rolex World Golf Update and to the second round of the European Open from the K Club, Ireland. 8-time Order of Merit winner Colin Montgomery posted the round of the day, a 6-under par 64. It included 7 birdies and just 1 bogey, leaving the Scot tied for second place at the halfway stage. 48-year-old David Frost is back in form. A 4-under par 66 on day 2 leaves the South African just 2 shots off the pace. BMW International champion Nicholas Fass is no doubt in form. A 68 on day 2 leaves the Swede just 1 shot off the pace and tied for second place. However, he's not the #1 Swede at the halfway stage. As today all eyes